We can start. Somehow we have a problem with the streaming. Sorry about that. Can you bring the cable because okay, for our friends online, we are experiencing some difficulties. Just stick to this channel. We are going to interrupt for a little while. And then hopefully reconnect. So keep trying to reconnect. Okay, so it should be good for... Sorry about that. Any questions?
Hi, Francis. Kind of looking back over the arc of since I started coming here. Life, I've definitely gotten happier and more at peace, and seen sort of overall changes in my life that are kind of remarkable, and sometimes feels a background of joy, that from nowhere.
But
at the same time, it's at times it's I guess you could call demanding the direct path, and did I feel that I fall short in like habits or thinking habits or lifestyle habits, and so I guess what I'm asking is how to look at, and it seems to require quite a lot to give up to look at it as just a natural process, and not focus on what one might consider weaknesses, or to actively work on quote unquote bad habits. Sometimes it seems very, very absolute, like like either you're realizing your true nature, or you're just not.
yeah. I think what is important is what I would suggest is to consider our past mistakes as God's mistakes. God made those. And so just to be responsible only for our current mistakes, or just upcoming mistake of the next moment. In other words, don't look back. Don't look back. God did it. It was perfect. Earlier on, I was playing at the tennis court. There was this spider. It looks really nasty. It was big, red. So, with my racket, I pushed it out of the court. But in this process, I was not careful enough, and I badly damaged it, so I had to kill it. And I felt really bad about it. I said I was stupid. But then, I think, well, it was her karma. God did it. That was her life.
Well, let's apply that to some situations.
In the future, I'll be more careful with spiders, but on the other hand, I don't want to push it with a hand.
That sounds wise, yeah. It seems like sometimes one doesn't learn from one's mistakes. Like, I know that if I
You mean one doesn't learn from God's mistakes, but I have something, we learn from the master. God seems also not to learn for his or her mistakes, since she keeps making them again and again. So,
well, it seems like an easy excuse, like, reach for the third.
it is an easy excuse. The only question is it a good excuse? Of course it's easy, but my contention is that it's both easy and good. So why try a difficult excuse?
I'm trying to apply this to a particular case of a bad habit, and I'm not sure I see it yet. I'm thinking of the wine, women, and song habit. Reaching for the third. Well, we can start with the wine. That's the easy one.
I think I should send a telex to Mr. Moore, telling him, I have an excuse ready for you.
Mr. Who?
What? You see, you're a bad student. You see, that's ignorance coming back with a vengeance. You should understand the wisdom behind my words. It applies to him too. It doesn't apply only to Bill.
I haven't been following.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel so guilty about that one. Should I become a politician
Yes, I guess
and get away with anything then?
you may feel the profile. You can go to Hollywood also.
So everything is
It's Thanksgiving, so that's when families gather to talk about politics and football, right? Yeah. No, but that's true. It's everything in the past was an act of God. Of course, some of us with a deep Christian conditioning, we want to find a sinner. There is no sinner.
chasing the wrong ones, and thinking about them
Define a wrong woman.
Immature and crazy. How about or one or both?
I mean,
I guess it's my karma yoga.
I think you are talking about 99.9% of mankind.
That could be.
No, but just see the past mistakes as God's mistakes. That's all.
So in a sense, it's pre or not preordained, predestined, and so.
No, not predestined. It's just that there is no individual separate doer. And as a result, there is no individual separate mistake maker.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the bad guy or the bad woman shouldn't be put behind bars. Yes, of course.
Well, I haven't gone that
For
far
safety.
yet.
For safety, but nobody is guilty.
Yeah, thanks. I have glimpses of that neutral way where you're just seeing it as any other.
Yeah, I see it as an earthquake or as
Laugh at it.
yes, an apple falling from the tree.
Oh, Adam and Eve.
Hi, Francis. In continuation of that, somewhat, but you know how we say in the body there are tensions, and you sense them and you understand them, and when say tell the story, they will leave you or they will dissolve, right? And you do talk of freedom at the molecular level. Something happens in the body. So similarly, won't there be things in the mind that make these habits or these patterns repeat? Yes, they were God's mistake then. But unless I do something about the thing that is going to create it again, I am the one stuck with it. Or whatever is the limited entity. If I'm willing to work on the body level, why would it not apply also to the mind level? Meaning there should be some work to do to remove or release some ideas. Symmetrically, it makes sense. I don't know if it is right.
Yeah. It's not against the law to learn from God's past mistakes.
But you're still not saying that it is mandatory to do so. You're still not saying that one must do that. As you would say, body...
One should do that as a hobby.
Right.
If we like doing it, we do it. If we don't like doing it, why do it?
And probably you would say the same to the body tensions also.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there is no... We have to, we must. It's more optional. The habit of separation is both in the mind and in the body, yes. By revisiting our thought pattern, we can learn from those times when we were thinking of ourselves as a man, as a woman. You know, that's it's a huge mistake.
And to go over it should be a efficient way to reduce some of that separation, no? To ponder.
If we understand, if we are already open to the possibilities that consciousness is genderless,
Right.
bodiless, mindless, or to be more precise, gender independent, body independent, mind independent.
So could you give an example of what one would take up as an exercise? Take up something in the past, and how do you pinpoint what caused it? Because if I try to think, I have 15 stories of what caused it. I'm sure the actual guy is hidden, right? So it's not easy that the mind would yield to its own investigation and reveal the actual culprit. At least I felt that way.
You see, with the spider, it started as a game I was playing, like I was teasing it. But also there was a remnant of, oh, this thing is dangerous, you see? So I wanted it to be out of the court. So I was not gentle. So under the guise of a game, there was still some...
Resentment.
Not resentment, some fear or whatever, some, not in my backyard, not on my tennis court, I don't want that to walk on my leg as I practice my serve. So we can always learn, but at the same time not feel guilty from the past mistakes, because that would be a current mistake, to feel guilty about our past mistakes. So it would perpetuate the big mistake, the only one there is, to think of ourselves as a human being.
So would you say that if the intention is sufficiently sincere, then mere pondering about what happened will reveal what really happened?
Yes, because it's still fresh in the memory what has happened. So that I said, we learn from God's mistakes, because the mistake is in the past. It's clearly understood that it was meant to happen. It was God made the mistakes, but at the same time, in the now, we can learn from it. We can see the process.
In fact, might I say that only if you don't have guilt can you be objectively steady.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
guilt is
going to corrupt the process of investigation.
guilt and its counterpart, which is righteousness, righteousness to see other people as guilty, as bad, as the same mechanism.
I usually don't nap in the afternoons. I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I remember you saying, after after I woke up, I felt like I was kind of cradled in some. I didn't feel the couch. I felt like I was whole. I was feeling my whole body. A rare experience. But when I opened my eyes, everyone had their eyes closed. I opened my eyes, and when the eyes are closed, like you said, sounds and bodily sensations, they seem to appear in the same place. But when the eyes are open, there seems to be, the visual sense really gives a feeling of separation. And I could imagine if I held up a ruler, a scale, I go, oh, that's just 2 centimeters apart, right? Like the distance from you to that statue there is maybe 6 inches apart. But that's not my experience. My experience is not of the visual senses, something separate from outside me.
So, I'm not sure I get your question, but what I get from your question is it's easy when the eyes are closed to feel this absence of separation with our surroundings.
Right.
But when we open our eyes, then when the sense of sight comes into play,
Right.
then it seems more difficult to experience this absence of separation.
Yeah, in a nutshell, yeah.
So you can address that by first using your intelligence. And your intelligence is going to tell you that theoretically, there is no reason to make a distinction between the sense of sight and the sense of hearing. What is good for the goose is good for the gander or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So intellectually at least, you can start by convincing yourself that it should be possible to have the same experience no matter whether the eyes are closed or open.
I suppose the conditioning is very strong too.
Yeah. But it's important first to see that, well, there is something peculiar about the sense of sight that seems to create more of an illusion of separation than the sense of hearing. Right. My teacher used to say the sense of hearing is more spiritual of all the senses for those reasons that we feel less separation. So then the second step is to still intellectually to understand that if it is true that consciousness is universal, our real body is the universe as consciousness. And so that legitimizes any attempt to change the way we perceive our body and the world, to bring it into compliance, so to speak, with this possibility that consciousness is universal. And then either we are already convinced that consciousness is universal, and then it's natural to bring our perception of the world into compliance with this revelation. Or it is not yet clear for us that consciousness is universal, but we are open to this possibility. And then we can use this change, or this attempt to change the way we perceive the body and the world, as an experiment we are conducting, asking from the universe the question, is consciousness universal or not? If we change our perspective, our perception, if we make a good faith attempt to change the way we perceive the world and the body, to try to eliminate the barrier we seem to interpose or between our body and its surroundings, then we should have an outcome of this experiment that would kind of confirm for us the veracity, or at least the veracity of our hypothesis, or at least confirm for us that we are moving in the right direction, that our attempt is moving in the right direction. So there are these two possibilities. I don't know whether I was clear in my answer. One, if I am convinced already that consciousness is universal, then as a matter of fact, I'm going to change and possibly to make a deliberate attempt at changing the way I perceive my body and the world. Even if I don't make such a deliberate attempt in due time, in the fullness of time, my way of perceiving the body and the world is going to change. If I make such a deliberate attempt, it will accelerate the process. It would facilitate the process. Either possibility, I'm not convinced that consciousness is universal, but I'm open to it. And then my yoga becomes an experiment, becomes an part of the investigation.
I think I'm at the second,
Yeah.
the questioning.
So then you see, so you do these exercises, and we will do several in the upcoming days.
You work on the visual, on the...
Yes,
Okay.
and then what is important is don't expect a result right away. You do them a little bit like you go to the gym and you do your reps of push-ups or pull-ups or whatever. You don't expect a result right away. Mm. But hopefully, after 3 months, your serve is a little faster. That's hopefully. Or at least it's still at the same speed in spite of your being 3 months older. So
I also had another question. In the metaphor of the spider, so sometimes I, like you do, I feel guilt over something, but sometimes I feel like the spider, and like, why am I being hurt? And
but sometimes it's okay, to be if someone bullies you, it's normal to not to be very happy about it.
right.
I mean, this story, if you are smack on the left side, you give the right side. I guess it depends on the speed of the
Slap.
Of the slap.
Right, so there's a degree to which you can take it, and after that...
No, so what I mean, but there is a distinction to be made between anger and outrage. Anger is personal, but outrage is impersonal.
Sure, yeah, yeah. I know.
In other words, outrage is a feeling that you would have. Let's say somebody does something to you which is inappropriate. You feel outrage, but you would have exactly the same feeling if that was not done to you, but was done to another person in front of you. You see, you will be equally outraged by this action. Therefore, the fact that it didn't matter whether it was done to you or to somebody else is a sign of its impersonality, that it is an impersonal feeling. It's not personal because you would have felt the same for somebody else.
Yeah, it's also a feeling of trying to figure out, like, did I deserve that? Because
well, that's a different story. Sometimes we
you
do.
do, right?
Sometimes we ask for it. Or there is this more general story of karma trying to say, okay, this happened to me because in the past I did that.
That's tough to stomach.
That's
because I've heard people saying, oh, she got cancer and died because of something she did in the last life. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me.
yeah.
Maybe she ate the wrong food, but not.
In the grand scheme of things, everything that happens in our life is meant to happen in the sense that that's exactly what is needed in this moment, even if it doesn't seem like that to us. But not in a sense of a punishment, not in a personal sense, but on the contrary, in a benevolent sense that's what we need to progress towards happiness, towards freedom, towards love, towards understanding.
Thank you.
What is love?
What it is not is something between two human beings, or between a human being and an animal, or between two living beings. It is the experience of our oneness. And of course, our intrinsic oneness, our oneness at the core. At the core, we are one, we are the reality of everything. Our reality is the reality of everything. So, love is the experience of our reality. And the reason I'm saying that is, for instance, if you see a young child doing something they love, like playing with their preferred toy, there is love there, you see? Or doing a task they like to do, like painting, when they are busy doing it. There is a lot of love. And it shows actually in the paintings they do, they have this charm, this innocence. So, love is much more than something between two human beings, and of course, much more than sex. Because it is this sense of oneness that reveals itself. It is a form of understanding also. We understand our oneness with, and in this oneness we can experience somehow what other people are experiencing. And in this way, we understand what their actions and their decisions. We see the situation from their perspective. Even if their perspective is wrong, it's important to be able to see it through their eyes, so to speak. So there is an element of empathy in this case, which is made possible by our being empty of the person, of separation. To the extent we are open, we will understand. If we don't project, you see, if we are open, we let the situation speak. And as a result, a conclusion comes. By conclusion, I mean an understanding of the situation and an understanding of the person. And then there is love, you see, in this openness. Because unknowingly we share this openness, unknowingly we are this openness.
What about like the state of the world and its chaos and all the crazy stuff which causes me to stress? Would it not be similar if I was able to have that same understanding?
Well, if you worry about the world, good luck. What I mean, good luck with happiness. Because then the precondition for happiness is our freedom from worries. And I don't see a way that would lead the world to a worry-free state. So there must be another way, and there is another way. And the other way, start with the understanding of the possibility that happiness is not dependent upon the situation in the world, in the body, or in the mind. As long as we believe that happiness is dependent upon the situation of the world, of the body, or of the mind, we are moving along the old paradigm. The ones our parents, our ancestors used to move along, and to no avail. You see, so these old recipes for happiness, they don't work. They've never worked. I was going to say they are like homeopathy, but already I've lost 80% of my potential students. All I have to do now is to say something about the Democrats. So there must be a new way, a different way. And that's the path of wisdom. And in the path of wisdom, the goal is not the betterment of the world. If God wanted a perfect world, she would have created a perfect world. It's a one without mosquitoes, without politicians, without spiders, right? You see? Only tennis players and musicians. You see? Everybody would be handsome, extremely smart. What? Talented, yes. But it would be really boring. You see? How fast can you play the Goldberg variations, you know? Oh, I can do better. So we have to understand the world not as an end in itself, but as a means. It's a means towards happiness. It's a tool towards happiness. But the happiness is not going to be found there. It's like a cab you take to the party, but you don't take the cab in the house where the party is taking place. By the way, I read the other way, a definition of a party, definition, this thing where I never get invited. Well, this party, you are invited. And that's the only party that is worth it. No hangover. So as long as we take the world too seriously, it should be clear that there is no path to happiness, right? It should be clear. So what's going to be? What is it going to be? You know? And the good news is we don't have to take it too seriously. And the even better news is that our taking it less seriously makes it, the world, more harmonious. The world is full, or history is full of tyrants who were taking the world and their role in it too seriously. And there are few people who didn't take the world too seriously. Their names are Jesus, Buddha, and a few others, or some artists also like Mozart. they weren't, or Bach, but they have left the world a better place compared to Stalin, Hitler, and Pol Pot.
I think in one of your webcasts, or I think a YouTube video somewhere, it's titled, "Everybody's Destiny is to be Happy." And I've been thinking about that, and I don't figure how you can make sense of it, because I could imagine someone whose whole life has been in pain. And I was at first thinking you meant maybe in the millisecond before they die, they're happy. And that's the only logical, that's the only thing I could think of was what you meant, because right now I don't know, and my belief in a life after death is not there. So I don't know in what sense you meant that everybody's destiny is to be happy.
It's an interesting question. Life after death.
I said I don't think there is such a thing, but
Yeah. But what does life before death mean? Because if we speak about life after death, it implies that we kind of know life before death. But what is life? What is it that is alive?
and you raised that point in today's meditation too, I think, which is time. I would think of life as memories and expectations of that are in time.
We see, often we identify life with movement.
Yeah.
But movement implies change. So a broader definition of life would be change.
Right.
But then change means the death of the old and the birth of the new. Right?
Right. Yeah. Every moment it's dying in a sense. Yeah.
And therefore, life, when we understand life as movement, we understand life as birth and death. And in that sense, as Krishnamurti used to say, we die with every thought, we die with every mentation, from moment to moment. It's not that we don't know death, we know death very well, because we die from moment to moment and we are born from moment to moment. But there is another way to understand life, as that which gives birth and that which sustains and that which destroys, that which is behind the three aspects of manifestation: its birth, its existence, its death, from moment to moment. So the reality, the changeless presence, or the changeless reality, that undergoes all these changes, yes. But which is in essence changeless. So that's a different understanding of life. And this life, with a capital L, is not subjected to death and birth. It's eternal. So it is present in our experience because reality is present in our experience. Let me rephrase that. There is an element of reality to our experience, to our human experience. It is not entirely an illusion, it cannot be. There is something real. Descartes used to say, there is something real. I don't know what it is. There is something real.
But we remember him because he said, I think, therefore I am, right?
No, but that's a different story. Actually, what he meant is, I perceive, therefore I am. The use of the word pense at the time was more wide than what we nowadays understand with think. But it's beyond. This element of reality doesn't die.
That's the happiness you're talking about.
Yes. What is important is to understand that we both die and we don't die. As Krishnamurti says, we die from moment to moment with every thought. So we shouldn't be afraid of this death because we know this death. We constantly experience this renewal.
We are afraid of is not death, but the process leading up to it.
That's a different issue.
Right.
We are in it. Or this process is in us already. We are not really afraid of it because nobody commits suicide. Although we are all dying in this sense, right? The body is dying. But only a few commit suicide, and for whatever reasons that. But most people don't, meaning that they are quite happy with the process. Although they may claim that they are very unhappy about it. Like my mother, she was always complaining against God, although she was an atheist. But she lived up to 96.
Awesome.
You see, so she was not in a hurry to put an end to her misery. So, meaning that, in fact, she was enjoying every moment of it, and especially complaining.
Yeah. I mean, that would be okay if somebody was just whining about it, but not really serious about it. She wasn't taking it seriously, like you say. But I see people who are in real pain, real misery, and
Well, sometimes they have.
I want to help someone, so. And I don't know how to do it.
The misery, the psychological misery, is always because we identify with the body-mind. Always. There are no exceptions. And everybody suffers, no matter whether young or old, healthy or sick, successful or losers, doesn't matter. There are people in some countries who live in a very poor conditions by our standards, and they have a smile on their face all day long. And there are people here, they can buy anything, and they commit suicide. So, happiness is a question in life. That's the goal of life. That's the mission, the project. And if we make it dependent upon something of the world, of the body, or of the mind, because this thing we make it dependent upon is impermanent, our happiness will go down the drain with the thing. And therefore, as we enjoy the thing, we cannot enjoy it fully because of its impermanence. And if the thing we enjoy the most is our life as a human body, we cannot really enjoy it because of the very impermanence of the human body. Think about it. So in this regard, we are all in the same predicament.
So is it contagious happiness? Is it, if you're close to someone who's happy, well, if, say, I'm happy, will somebody close to me also become happy?
There are two forms of happiness. There is intermittent happiness, in which the problem that I mentioned hasn't been solved, but has been postponed or has been forgotten. Often in our early years, we are quite good at postponing and forgetting this problem because we are enthusiastic about discovering the world, experiencing, trying to apply the recipes for happiness that don't work. But a moment comes when we have to acknowledge the failure. It's a moment which is important. It's a moment of rebirth.
Francis, you recommend following your interest,
What?
following your interest, following your enthusiasm. Yeah, is this not a way to happiness, or is there any relationship between that and happiness?
Yes. Once once there is a recognition that the source of happiness is not in the objects, in the situations, but within. Within, I mean at the very core of our human experience. Then instead of being interested in the objects, we are interested in the source of happiness. So the enthusiasm for something originates from happiness, from the source within. Unlike the desire for something which comes from a sense of lack, comes from ignorance, comes from misery, and I desire this because if I get this, I won't be miserable any longer. And that's a mistake, because then I get this, and I realize I'm still miserable. And then I want that, and then I want that, and that. But once I have understood the vanity of this process, and that happiness is not to be found in the objects, then, but within, for someone who is already open to this perspective, then I told him or her, then because you are no longer interested in the objects but in your true nature, then try to follow your enthusiasm, because the desire that originates from your enthusiasm is still the perfume of its source is still there. Don't stick to the object of your enthusiasm. Stick to your enthusiasm. You see, the object is irrelevant. So in this way you become very nimble, because you don't follow the objects really, you follow the enthusiasm.
Could this be a way to freedom?
Yes, that's a way to be established in the source of the enthusiasm. Instead of moving away towards the objects, you constantly move back to the source of your intentions, which is happiness. But I wouldn't give this piece of advice to someone who is not open to this perspective, because then this person would get more and more lost in desires. They couldn't understand the distinction there is between following your ignorant desires and following your enthusiasm. You need to have a discrimination to see that there is a difference between these two attitudes. So then you can follow it. Because then the object is there is no attachment to the object. We could put that differently by saying, desire is okay provided there is no attachment to the object of desire. That purifies the desire, you see. A desire is often innocent in its first movement, in its first jaillissement, how do you say? Yeah.
Sprouting.
Sprouting and whatever. But then the thought comes, if I cannot get this, I be miserable. And that's a fall from grace, you see?
I think like a lot of artists connect with that happiness
Exactly, yes.
at certain times, and then they somehow rely on that and then they suffer a tremendous amount because they've lost their innocence or think of Mozart. I mean, Mozart could not have written that beautiful music if he didn't enjoy doing what he was doing.
Yes. But, I think that the picture of Mozart as someone who was sad, it's a rewriting of history. I think he was kind of a happy fellow, and I remember someone mentioning that to my teacher, who said something like, "Where did you get that from?" How can someone sad write the happiest music? You see, it's deep also. It's deep, but it's very happy also.
So for the truth seeker, one way to realize one's freedom is to ask the question, what do I want now? What do I truly want now? Perhaps wanting without, what's my enthusiasm? Where's my enthusiasm?
Yeah, to ask the question, am I where I want to be, doing what I want to be doing in this moment? Given the context, given the constraints. I mean, of course, it's not I would like to be a billionaire in Acapulco, on a 100-foot yacht. No. But given the constraints and the condition, am I where I want to be, doing what I want to be doing in this moment? That makes sense. And it's a way also to live one's life without regrets. In hindsight, there is nothing to regret if I have always been doing what I wanted to be doing, given the constraints that were beyond my choosing.
We don't have to feel guilty following our bliss, following our enthusiasm.
But the ones who enjoy guilt,
yeah, go for it.
We have to understand that they enjoy it. And the reason why they enjoy it is that in their thought, they constantly go back to it. I mean, if they wouldn't enjoy it, why would they go back to it? Right? I mean, if you have been eating at a bad restaurant, you won't go back to it, right? Unless you enjoyed it. But then they pretend that they have no choice. Whereas in fact, they love going back to it. It's like scratching when it itches. You scratch because you enjoy scratching.
Thank you.
So, Francis, with this enthusiasm for the object, etc., I have also struggled a bit. So, on one hand, we say enthusiasm is not for the objects, right? It is for the source.
The enthusiasm can be apparently for an object. Yes, yes. Let's do this. Let's do that. But there is no without attachment. You see, it comes from happiness, a desire for celebration. In a sense, let's do that. when people are depressed, for instance, they don't want to do anything. You see, they lack enthusiasm. It doesn't mean they have no desires, but it's like a flame is no longer is extinguished in them. The enthusiasm is the love in us. Is the love, like a child, our childlikeness, if you will.
Because I felt that at times, whatever the mind can produce seems uninteresting. I used to be very happy at least about my intelligence and the ability to imagine and create. Today I realize that even that is a liability. It only keeps me engaged in thoughts, and this is not going to take me anywhere. So even the thinking structure, which I was happy about, I said, this is another trap. When do I get rid of this? So then what is the enthusiasm left for? I could create things, I could play things.
The enthusiasm is never for something really that you can foresee, not something that you can predict. Enthusiasm has to be always for something open. Let's go to this place and see what happens.
Let's see what happens. No, but to me, let's see what happens, let's do this. I have that assessment of why. What you're not happy with the present. There seems to be an escape from, this wanderlust. Let's go there, see what happens, seems to have that disdain of just chasing another thing, right? So I'm not, to that extent, I'm not interested.
No, it's not. Yeah, but that may be the case. If you are getting bored, right. If you are unhappy, you say, okay, I hope to get out of this predicament by doing something. No, that's an escape.
That's an escape, right.
No, I am happy. I'm happy, and let's do this. Let's take the car, let's go to the beach. Let's go to this restaurant, let's visit this friend,
So if that is not there, something is wrong. Something is wrong as in some work needs to happen somewhere.
Yeah. If we feel that something is wrong, we have to first to investigate what's wrong and see that nothing is wrong.
Right.
And then from this basis that nothing is wrong, all is well as unfolding as it should,
right.
Then some enthusiasm for something will yes,
be there.
Because as long as this body-mind is alive,
right.
It's not going to be sitting on its bottom forever. So, there might be some special cases in which you go to the cave and you sit and you are perfectly happy like that. But for most of us, the body needs to move a little bit.
True.
So we have to let the enthusiasm move the body. That's the point.
Or the mind. But to me, sometimes it seems that if this body-mind complex was not there, it would be a great life. It's almost like there is enthusiasm to die. To say, when do I get rid of this thing? And then we'll be ourselves.
That's like it comes from the feeling that what is now is not good.
Right. So exactly. So once I tried to say, well, Francis says what you're encountering is God, right? That's the face of God. So I said, yeah, that should be something to get enthusiastic about. I should be able to see God, right? But this is God. How can I see it? I don't see it. I see this all as liability, and I want to get out of it, right? So then to say, well, no. This is God. Love it. What you're doing is love it.
how can I convey the sense of awe, not because there is this or there is that, but because there is something rather than nothing. Isn't that wonderful? The very simple fact of being.
But the very simple fact of being is not subject to non-being. So in a way, it is not wonderful. It is the very guarantee of being. So in a way, there should be nothing to be awed about, right? I mean, all this is intellectual, I understand that. At the feeling level, if I think about it, I say, yeah, sure I am. And that is never going to change. So enthusiasm for what?
You're a tough cookie, Anup. My teacher used to say sometimes, in most cases, you need just a cork opener, but sometimes you need a screwdriver.
A screwdriver is whiskey plus brandy mixed together with some tomato juice.
But I'm glad because at least I made you laugh. So that's already something rather than nothing.
And that is wonderful.
See where your laughter comes from, because when we laugh, it's always from happiness. Okay, we're getting hungry now. For our friends online, okay, next time I answer your questions.